Everyone, and welcome back to the Business of Business podcast, Two Daughters and Their Dad. I'm your host, Stacey J. Dempsey. And thankfully, like always, I have with me the one and only dad and one of the other daughters. Good morning and good afternoon to the both of you.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good morning, good afternoon to all of our viewers and our listeners. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us today. And today we want to talk a little bit about what the entrepreneurial mindset looks like when you're faced with setbacks and challenges. Because regardless of the business you're in, the industry you're in, whether it's your first year in or your 25th year in, guess what? There's going to be some things that come along that are going to be unexpected or maybe even expected, but maybe end up being harder or tougher or more challenging than what we anticipated. So today we just want to share a little bit of insight on what we feel like would be some good things to keep in mind as those things as you build your entrepreneurial mindset, because every time you get to exercise this muscle, it gets a little bit wiser and a little bit tougher. And so why don't you guys start us off with, what have been some of the things or tactics you all have used when approaching, setbacks and challenges in your business, and maybe how has it differed from your first year to.
Well, I think so. I'm coming up on 10 years in business, right? So this is kind of hitting home for me. But I think, early on when you first open your business, it's like, at least for me, it was 150% every day. But what we know is that we cannot sustain 150% for years and years, right? And so, I think what is special about challenges and setbacks in a business setting is that the first time you meet a challenge, it almost like rocks your whole world. And then what ends up happening is that you tend to meet that same kind of challenge or similar kind of challenge for a second time, and the blow isn't as hard. And because you've been through it before. And so you start to develop this mindset of like, I went through this before. This is what I've learned. This is what, I did that didn't work, X, Y, and Z. And you can analyze it less emotional and more logical as you continue to meet different challenges inside of your business. And then, then you get to a point where it's like, now it's time for me to be in the fulfillment stage of my business. And that happens differently for everybody, right? It could happen maybe after a year, maybe 10 years, 20 years. But hopefully, I pray that every entrepreneur listening to this gets to a place that says, I've worked so hard. I've worked so many hours. I've gone above and beyond. I've done all the things that now is my fulfillment. And we tap back into the why of like, why am I doing all of this? Right. I should be able to go to my kid's soccer game at 5 o'clock. I should be able to have off on Sundays and not think about the business. I should be able to do these things. And so then, you go from kind of living in this survival mode to fighting to be in the fulfillment mode, because you're always kind of waiting for the next pin to drop. So, I think that your first year opening a business, it's supposed to be hard because that year is meant to really show you if you're cut out for it or not. And, me and dad have talked about this before. I'll never forget, like year one, I think it must have been on a Sunday. And I was like, doing something and dad called me. He's like, even Jesus rests on Sunday. And I'm like, there's no rest for the weary. Okay. I got 50 million things. And that is how I operated life the first year. It was no days off. It didn't matter what it was. And so, at now, almost 10 years in, as I'm preparing, for a new season of my life, is like, I look back on all of that and say, I do deserve to step away from the business for 2 months to enjoy my family. I do deserve, to do these things. And so, but the only reason I've been able to get to that place is because I've gone through different challenges and setbacks inside of my business, learned from them. And now when those challenges happen, they're just not as scary because you've built that muscle of resilience. Is this actually a big deal or am I making it a bigger deal than it actually is? Um, And one thing that I love when I like call dad when I have my meltdowns is like, everything's going to be okay, right? So for all the entrepreneurs that are going through a challenge right now, I'm going to be dad and say, it's going to be okay, right? You're going to figure it out. You're going to be fine. And that's just what happens. You just figure it out when it comes to these certain challenges. But, I don't want to take away from like, it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, then everyone would be, you know, owning an insurance business, but that's just not the case. So, what about you, Dad? I know we've had so many times. I literally almost texted Dad last night. Like, you guys are talking through me. And I almost texted you saying, when do I get out of survival mode? Because I still feel some days I'm like still fighting in survival mode. Like, I'm stressed out about this or about that. But I decided not to text him and just suck it up and deal with it.
Well, I mean, I think the first mindset that we need to have as entrepreneurs, as business people, is the fact that challenges will come, setbacks will happen. So don't ever think that you're going to be immune from challenges. Now, you might be in a place right now when your business started with your business started out and it's been going very well and you really haven't faced anything. Well, you will. There'll be at some point there will be challenges, there will be setbacks, there will be problems. So accepting that right out of the gate is really important, because then when it happens, you're not in resistance mode, pushing against it, which can oftentimes, most times make those problems worse, because now you're kind of in that emotion piece of it. You're in that, you know, whether it's concern or fear or worry, so just understand that right out of the gate, and rather than push against it, invite it in, saying, okay, you know, here's some challenges. So let's invite it in, and let's start to, analyze it and see what we need to do. Because at the end of the day, if you approach it properly, these things will benefit you. As you said, Jennifer, I mean, you have been through things in your business that have prepared you for the things that are going through in your business today. You've overcame those problems. You dealt with them. You built new systems around them. You became better business person because of those. And so now as they come up, it's less emotional. Even though, again, I mean, I'm not saying we're robots here, but, but we know that we've been through this before. Might look different. The problem might be different, but we've been through it before. And as you said, Jennifer, we came out okay. Um, Now, and the other thing, and I think I said this to you too, it's not just, you're going to be okay. I mean, that's important, but also I think I've said to you, okay, but you're prepared for this. You're prepared for this challenge. You're prepared for this setback. You know, so for example, your business is facing something that, could impact business. It could impact cash flow. Well, hopefully you prepared in such a way that you have a cushion of financial cushion in your business to extent that you can endure that setback. You can maybe even invest back into that in a way that will again propel the business, in you know in such a way that, because a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, when they see challenges coming, sometimes, the tendency is to pull back. It's to, okay, I can't, I don't want to spend any money. I don't want to invest right now. Maybe I should come back on advertising. Maybe I should make these changes. But if you study successful businesses, they actually do the opposite. They invest into the challenge. They say, okay, everybody else, say, all my competition, that is in this same industry or business, they're shrinking back, they're pulling back, they're conserving resources. So now it's my opportunity to say, I'm going to invest into it. I'm going to up my advertising. I'm going to invest in some more people. I'm going to do these things so that when this comes to an end, you are ahead of the game. So an example of that was back in 08, 09, when the financial crisis hit and things were really, the economy was really struggling. And we saw, again, a lot of our clients were struggling. Businesses were struggling. Business was way down. So, and we felt that too, because in our case, our revenue, we weren't losing clients, but because they were doing less business, we were making less revenue because a lot of times their premiums, for example, are based on how much business they're doing, how big their payrolls are. And so those were all shrinking. So, we had to face, the reality of, okay, we have, our revenue is down, but we have the same number of clients. We're not losing clients. So, we sit down and talked about it and say, listen, yeah, we could probably lay somebody off or lay a couple people off, but then that's still going to impact our service. That's going to impact how we service our clients. And so we don't want all of a sudden the service level to drop. So we stayed the course and continued to keep people on and do things the way we were doing them. And then all of a sudden the economy turns around, right? And so, and we were well positioned where a lot of other places, did shrink back, and their customer service dropped. So we were able then in competitive situations, it opened up more opportunities to quote businesses and get those kind of opportunities. And, so it worked, but but yeah, it's still nerve wracking when you see it happening. But again, it comes back to, but we were also well positioned financially. We weren't, we had a financial cushion. And I think that is critical, when it comes to, facing those challenges.
Sounds like you also stayed the course, that, it was, we're feeling this right now. We don't know exactly how long it's going to last, but we know it's going to turn around because in some ways history repeats itself. Things, I think during that time, one of the sayings that I heard a lot, like right now, this is the time that separates the boys from the men, like the ones that are, going to survive or are going to flourish after this. But this is kind of separating, those that weren't as prepared or didn't think as far as longevity is concerned. And so you guys stayed the course. You stayed the course, and therefore, had to pay a price in that, but it certainly propelled us forward. That's for sure. And so what would be just a couple of other things, as far as day one versus now, but as you look at your business where it is now and how long you both have been in business, different setbacks could pop up at any time. But what would be kind of your go-to, I guess, thought process now, knowing that in the next 5 years and the next, like Jennifer has things, life is changing, the things are being planned out, but sometimes things aren't able to be planned out. So what would be kind of your go-to thought process on something that just kind of pops up out of nowhere for your business, say in the next 2 to 3 years? How would you guys, what would be your first thought in how to handle that?
Well, let me go here because I think me and Dad kind of have this in common that, I think sometimes we base fear around the unknown of what's next. And a lot of times we talk about, seasons of life. And, I think it's important to understand, maybe the season of life you came from, the season of life that you're entering, and really what that looks like. And so sometimes we allow fear to to clog our thought process of the future of, oh, what if this happens or what if that happens? And of course, it's important to be prepared, like we've talked about. But, for me, it's regardless of what can happen with the economy or what can happen with me or with my family. The one thing that we have to have a strong mindset is that it doesn't matter what's going on in the economy, in our personal lives. What we have to be committed to, and this is a lifelong commitment, is that we still need to show up every day and do our very best as the business owner, right? And so when you can do that, when you can say, when you can table things and really say, you know what, no matter who's inside of the business or what's going on, I'm still going to just show up with integrity. I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to do what I think is best. That's where it starts. That's where it has to start. And so when it comes to challenges and setbacks, if you already have that mindset of let me make the best decision in this moment with this challenge, with this setback, even though I don't know what's on the other side of this, I know that if I can put my best foot forward, that then it's going to work out, even if it doesn't work out. I think, for one thing that I'm thinking, and dad talked about that, but for me, it was the pandemic back in 2020, right? And so that was something that was out of my control. I was very stressed. I was very worried. I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I didn't know if my business was going to survive. Of course, I wanted it to, but there was so much unknown and so much fear that I could have said, you know what, I'm not going to pay the 3 months bills because of the unknown, right? For example. But thankfully, we went into that saying we're prepared. We have the cash flow. We have the money. We're going to see this through, and we're going to make it through this shutdown and be able to invest in the safety of our clients and our staff when we do return to work. And so that's one example of like you have no idea what's going to happen. You have so much fear. It's almost like I want to hold on to my money because I don't know what's going to happen. But instead, you just have that mindset of everything's going to be okay, and we're going to move forward with that. Where maybe other businesses, in our situation said, I'm going to hold on to my money. I don't want to invest my money into any of this, right? So that would be the big difference. And the other thing that I'm thinking as we're talking about this is I had actually our sister, right? When our sister started becoming an entrepreneur, she's like, how did you figure out like taxes? How did you figure out all of this? And I'm going to share with you guys in 10 years of doing business, I had 1 year that I owed $15,000 to the IRS, right? And I was pissed. I was so upset and so
Mad.
right
Yeah.
now. I'm going to share that with you because that happened because I didn't know any better. So as soon as I owed $15,000, I smartened up really quick, right? I started asking more questions. I was more in tune with my accountant. We were figuring things out so I could be more prepared. Thankfully, we had the cash flow to pay the bill, right? We were able to pay the bill and move on. But if I didn't go through that setback, that was very upsetting to me, I wouldn't have forced myself to understand taxes and everything that comes along with that and making sure I was meeting with my accountant more often and having a plan and being more involved in that part of my business. So I learned so much from that. And that's when I shared with our sister was like sometimes you have to, something happens that wakes you up inside of your business to say, okay, I really don't know enough about this and I need to get smarter and better at this. So let me lean into this. And that is the only reason I feel like I'm very aware of the tax situation now is because that $15,000 still wakes me up in the middle of the night sometimes, like, let's not do that again, right? So you learn from those things and it almost forces you into just doing better in certain areas of your business. So That was a big setback for me. Dad, remember that? And you were like, you better suck it up. Dad did not give me he did not care about those tears, Stace. You know he didn't.
I have a similar story, but you know what? Sounds like you made some money this year. So basically, that's what
He said.
I know. That's what he told me. Sounds like you made some money this year. So write the check and let's go make some more money. Like, but I want this money.
Right.
He's like, we say he does care, but like that's the lesson. It's like, okay, well, you know what? Same thing. Like I need to understand more. I need to this is a lesson that thankfully I only had to learn once. And it's has served me very well, over almost 25 years that I don't have a hiccup like that anymore, just because I know my own trends. I know what I need to be doing on my side. I know what I need to be communicating with my accountant. I know what questions I need to be asking. And I also have an accountant that knows that that before I even need to ask the question, let me know. Let me know if you can, so that we can be doing things all year long. Because just like most people, I mean, nobody wants to have an upset client. So, most people that are working hard to do business are going to do their best to prevent that. So, thankfully, I have a wonderful relationship with my accountant that, again, I had to learn that lesson once and it was horrible. Um, anyway, so Dad, lesson that you've had to learn that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously many, because, again, going back, you had said earlier about year one, I mean, every year has its hosts of challenges, setbacks, whether it's economy, whether it's the industry you're in. It just really doesn't matter. I think what matters most is just to realize that part of your role as a business owner, entrepreneur is learning how to manage problems, challenges, and setbacks. That's probably one of your primary roles as a leader, is knowing how to do that and not be shaken by it, but be just understand it, and again, and embrace it, because it's part of what your role is. So I think before we wrap up, it would be good just to talk about, all right, here's a situation, and everybody can think back on, again, going back, still fresh in our mind, as Jennifer brought up, was COVID, and just how that all, happened so abruptly. So again, I mean, those type of situations, you know, aren't hopefully going to happen very often, but the day-to-day problems, the things that are more prevalent, I think, and what's important is, first of all, to expect it. Number two is to, okay, let's analyze it. What are we dealing with here exactly? And number three is, how are my peers, how are other businesses like mine who are going to be dealing with those same issues handling it? So get some intelligence around it from what your peers are doing and how they're approaching it. Then also, this is a great place to reach out to mentors and coaches and people who have been doing things for a lot of years, and saying, okay, here's what I'm faced with. You know, give me some ideas, give me some recommendations, give me some suggestions, so not trying to tackle it on your own, but get that feedback from people more experienced. Another thing that I think is important is, if you have employees, if you have a team, is bring them in on it. Don't say, hey, this is what we're facing as an industry. Here's what we're facing in our business. Here's what we're facing in the economy. Suggestions. Here's, what's some thoughts? What's some recommendations? How can we approach this? And, many times once you bring, your team into the equation, you can gain some really very good insights from them. But I think even more important is that they feel like they're going to be part of the solution now, and that you're not you're not just relying on your own experience and knowledge, to, try and tackle this. So bringing your team in on, or at least, some of your key people if you have that situation. And then again, just try to analyze it, from a financial perspective. Is this something that, I can invest into? And ask this question, okay, this is going to be setback. Is it short term? Could it be long term? And where's the opportunities in this? How can I take this setback and challenge and maximize opportunities? Because, usually the depth of the challenge will also bring, with it ultimately that increase in business or in opportunities. So if it's a big challenge, big opportunities, small challenge, small opportunities. But it's just having that mindset. And then going out there and looking for even resources, you know, books, business books. I tell you, I wanted to bring this up on the podcast. I don't know if you guys have been seeing it, but I have on my social feeds. And I don't think I brought this up, but there's a lot of stuff out there now on those, where you can do the 15-minute book summaries. Have you seen those? Um, and so I did one of those. I forget which one. I think mine's called Headway, but I think there's others. But I tell you, that is really especially for the busy people. That's a great tool because it takes again these books that are helpful and with full of great ideas and really curates them down to 15-minute bites that you can listen in your car, listen while you're exercising, that type of thing, rather than, tackling a whole book because they just basically pull out the main points and. And so that's good. But my point is something like that, saying, where you can maybe say, all right, let me jump in here and see what some authors have to say that have experienced. So I guess my point being is that investing, into the challenges, investing yourself into the problems, will allow you to come out of them stronger, positioned for growth, and then ultimately probably better off financially, cash flow, profits, all of those things. So again, just embracing it and not resisting it, I think is that first key step.
Excellent. Good stuff and good nugget there on the 15-minute book summaries. That's a really good little nugget there to share with everyone. So to all of our viewers and our listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in with us today. We look forward to seeing and talking to you guys in our next episode. Perfect.